Welcome to ND and Me, a podcast to share NDers' lived experiences. I'm Richard, an ND coach, mentor, accountability buddy, and business consultant. Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing okay. So, talk to me, Amy, about why neurodiversity is something in your life.
Oh, well, so I am neurodiverse. I'm very recently diagnosed. I've got ADHD, and discovering everything that comes along with that has been a real journey for me.
So, how recently were you diagnosed?
I think it was in the past couple of months.
Yeah.
I mean, I lose track, which says a lot. So, yeah, it was definitely within the past couple of months. And yeah, it's changed my life.
Cool. So, tell me more. Who is Amy?
So I am a marketer. Copy is my craft. And I'd like to think that ADHD has actually really helped me because it's definitely given me some creative flair, seeing the world from a different lens, you know.
So, why copywriting?
I think I've always loved words. And I actually did a post on LinkedIn about the fact that I think because I see the world from a different perspective and not everyone understands it, I use words as a way to give people insight into how my brain works. So I've used them as a means of communication to express myself when I felt misunderstood, which you often do as a neurodiverse person.
Yeah. So you were diagnosed a couple of months ago. How long have you had the feeling that you might be different?
About a year.
Mm.
So I initially went through the NHS, and obviously their waiting lists are really, really long. But I'd found out through TikTok. So I got onto ADHD talk, and I was like, okay, why are all these things resonating? And I went through what I believe to be the 7 stages of grief, coming to terms with the fact that I'd been let down, like no one had sussed out that something was different with me. And I'd always thought I was just a bit of an odd one out. But it explained everything.
So if you're open to it, talk to us about some of those experiences that stood out to you as being odd.
So I really, really struggled through school, but not in a way that was flagged by teachers because I wasn't disruptive. So I struggled to do homework. I wasn't interested. I'd constantly daydream. And I'd get in trouble for that, but it would always be, oh, she's scatterbrained, she's time blind, she's not trying hard enough. She's chatty, but it wasn't like shouting at everyone or going to the front of the class or getting up when I knew it wasn't right. It was basically just general airheadedness that I now know is just because I wasn't engaged.
So how do you keep yourself focused now?
It's a journey, real journey. I think I have a lot of creative control in taking on projects that genuinely interest me. So because of the nature of my job and the fact that I get business from LinkedIn, I can choose who I work with. And I won't work with anybody if I don't genuinely back their vision. So if I'm interested in what they're doing and I genuinely back them, it's easier for me to focus because I'm really invested.
And is that a kind of gut instinct on that values connection, or do you have a rhyme and reason pathway to decide whether somebody's a good fit?
I think it's a bit of both. There are topics that I'm generally more interested in. So even makeup and fashion, for example, as a person, those are things I'm already passionate about. But if somebody has a personality with a bit of gravitas and they're disruptive and I feel like they understand me, I would want to learn about their industry, even if I don't know about it already.
Yeah.
So a lot of it has to do with personality, but there definitely are some things I'm more interested in just as topics.
So might it surprise you to realise that I'm a former Avon representative and sales leader?
I love to hear it.
Oh, made redundant 3 times in 2012. in 6 or 7 months, and started contracting. And between contracts, I did Avon.
I would have
and
loved
then
to see you try and sell me lipstick.
it's really easy. I put a catalog through your door. You go, oh, I like that, and then I put the order form on the internet, and I get a delivery, and I come to your house and I go, give me some money. It's just
The
done.
marketer in me is just screaming. But if it works, it works.
Well, that's kind of the problem with Avon's sales model, is that it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
You're asking individuals to self-fund a lot of their work. Oh yeah, but it's on credit. Yes, but there's also, it isn't as fruitful as a lot of people would sense it could be. And then 2014, 2016, they started then selling direct to customers via a website. Okay, well, what's the point in?
Shop, isn't it? Very body shop like. They're both similar sort of model. And I always think if people are giving stuff away, it tends to be Avon or Body Shop. So
but that's one way of completely killing your self-employed market if you then bypass them and sell straight to your clients. Body Shop's slightly different because they have physical premises.
True.
And they have to keep their upkeep for those properties. I do a lot of work with an organization whose retail arm is pretty big. They've got 200 or 300 stores in the UK, about 600 globally. But they only use their stores as a recruitment tool to sell product, but 90% of their sales are online.
Oh.
Because they're only using the storefront to onboard people into buying into it.
Cheap business model. There's lots of work.
It works. They make 120 million a year. So it's a little bit like kitchen showrooms. You're not going to sell lots and lots of kitchens and need a lot of space to sell a kitchen. But then, anyway, we're slightly off topic. That never happens. So, you're marketing yourself as the Mouthy marketer. Marketer versus marketeer. How do you end up in marketing, or was it kind of like a natural progression from school and words and stuff?
No, it was not a natural progression. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do after secondary. After obviously struggling with studies because I wasn't engaged, I tried A levels for a year, hated them. It was just like school but worse. I did a year of travel and tourism, and I wanted to be an air hostess, and I'm really glad I didn't end up pursuing that. Obviously,
you need to talk to Matt, because Matt Gutwell was one of the first male air stewards anyway.
I do ever so slightly regret not pursuing that at all. But after the travel and tourism qualification, I went for a digital marketing apprenticeship, just because I thought to myself, well, I've used social media for pretty much as long as I can remember. Why not monetize it? Why not figure out if it's something that I can make a living from? And from there, I went and specialised in SEO. So I did SEO content writing. And now I'm with a different agency where my main focus is copywriting for ads, website copy, socials. It's very broad, just copy in general.
But it's piecemeal enough for you to always get novelty.
Yeah.
It's not that you're writing the same stuff over and over and over again.
Yes, because if you stick to long form, you get bored of long form. If you're only doing short, it's easy to flit around. But I get a bit of a mix of both.
Cool. So one of the questions that I ask guests is about how ADHD is affected or afflicted their younger lives. So looking back, do you have any examples of things that went well or didn't go to plan, where you can go, hang on, I can link that to something? So
I think when it comes to affliction, rejection sensitive dysphoria has been massive for me. So as a young girl, I felt sort of out of place when it came to friendship groups, and I've never had a solid friendship group. I've kind of flitted around, and I think that's probably where I struggle the most. But that is because of perceived rejection and how much it hurts me. And I think it's easy to do that with friends because we've all got lives and we're busy. But that was hard for me to comprehend as somebody in primary school, in secondary school. So it's something I'm working on now. But in terms of benefits, I think I've got a high emotional intelligence because of that. So when I do have a relationship with somebody, I'm very empathetic. I can use my emotional awareness for marketing copy, because obviously we've got to generate some emotion to get people to buy. So it definitely has its upsides, but it's had its downsides as well.
And have you ever struggled with impulse control, or doing things that are slightly more or less risky than you would
Yeah,
have hoped?
it's driving,
Mm.
which is not a shocker because I think it's a common theme. But I've had to really, really chill myself out. I did have a black box at one point, and the insurance got cancelled because I went 100 miles per hour. So I don't know if I can get arrested from saying that, but I've said it anyway.
Well,
I had to cancel it before they cancelled it on me.
So normally when it comes to culpability, there's a difference between a motoring offence and a criminal offence,
True.
because the Road Traffic Act is anyway.
No one could have done it. No one
And what you would also have to do is provide a time, place, and location. Well, place and location is the same thing, Richard. Silly. Anyway, but I think I wrote off 3 cars in the first 5 years of learning to drive.
It's so easy done.
And I was riding a scooter, moped, for
Mhm.
2 years before I passed my test. So my grandparents were like, he'll pass first time. I passed first time, because I've got road sense. Yeah. What I don't have is sense of how much grip a car does or doesn't have.
Right.
So yeah, I went into the back of a few other things.
Oh no. I'm
But
glad I haven't
these
had
things happen. Yeah, it's all a little bit bizarre. So what's the future of Mouthy Marketeer? You're with an agency at the moment, and that's kind of the longer term plan of doing project-based work that's got some novelty to it, that you can buy in on the values base.
Mhm.
And you've kind of found a happy place doing that.
Mhm.
Cool.
I think I see myself in marketing long term, but more so just writing. So I may end up specialising down the line. I'm not interested in having my own business right now, but I would love to write a book. So that is something that I'm thinking about. I don't know what form it would take, whether it be fiction or non-fiction, but it would be the next step in almost developing my copy, because I've done blog posts, I've done slightly long form white papers, I've done short things. So a book is the next step.
That's brilliant. So how much do you feel compelled to learn about your neurodiversity, or is it more of a case of just accepting it as who you are and living?
I think I'm a mix of the two. Part of me just accepts it and understands that I've got an inherent grip on what it means to be neurodiverse, because I am. But also researching ADHD helps me figure out the bits of me that I don't like so much. And I am looking into getting an ADHD coach, and also potentially what medication can do for me. So I am a bit of both. I know that I've got a grip on neurodiversity because I am, and I've always thought differently. But figuring out how to manage it the best is something that I put effort into doing.
And being blunt, what bits of you don't you like?
Ooh, forgetfulness, the rejection sensitivity, because it genuinely affects your day-to-day life if you stop yourself from doing things that could hurt you. I think organizational things, the fact that I have to be under immense pressure to focus if I'm not genuinely interested in something. It's just a very up and down sort of condition to have. I feel like I'm either on top of the world emotionally or I'm on the floor. And I would like a bit of steadiness. I think that's what I dislike the most.
Cool. I'm thinking whilst looking out the window because something moved and distracted me. These things happen because, yeah. So, have you heard of VAST instead of ADHD? So there's a group. I don't want to call them a community because that means that they all think the same things. That's harder to side by. So I think it started off with Samantha Hugh wanting to come up with a term that didn't see ADHD as a deficit.
Right. Yeah.
So we're starting to hear about variable attention stimulus trait. So it's not that we have an attention deficit, it's that our attention is reliant on, our attention is variable depending on the stimulus.
I think that's entirely true, but I'm not that hung up on the name, if I'm completely honest. I've got what I need. I understand through research how my brain works. I support other people if that's what they want to do, but the name doesn't bother me. It's more just figuring out how my mind works.
And what things you can put in place to make them work better or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk us through the conversation about noise cancelling headphones.
Oh, okay. That's a funny one. Yeah, I was in a workplace where they wanted to be very conversational and they wanted everybody present, which is understandable. But for me to actually achieve anything, I can't have lots of, well, distraction. I can't have lots of sensory input. I need to have control over my surroundings. And obviously I was in an office, so I didn't have control over movement or anything. But the one thing that I felt I could control was the sound input. So I had started wearing noise cancelling headphones and was told that I was unapproachable and it wasn't acceptable. And that was before I realised I had ADHD. So I couldn't put into words why it was such a necessary thing for me. And I didn't feel like I could campaign for it from a legal basis at all. But then when I realised that I had ADHD, I told that employer, and I eventually did get those headphones so I could use them. But the trust was always, it was broken by that point, I think, having to campaign for something that just made me more productive.
So, as a Luddite, pleb, or ignoramus, depending on the thesaurus that I've swallowed, what's it like with noise cancelling? Because I haven't done that, but I always end up listening to something while I work.
Right.
So I might be listening to music, I might be listening to a podcast. Yeah. So is it a white noise or is it a cancellation of? Yeah. What's it like?
So it's a cancellation of other sounds, and I would use music while I was working. So it's not like white noise, brown noise, any of that. I do work to music. I think the rhythm helps. I've literally just forgotten the point I was going to make.
About noise cancelling headphones and what it's like to wear them.
Wait, I was going to say something really good. See, this is what happens. Your brain goes ahead of you, and then you have to think about what words are coming out of your mouth, and the two just don't mingle. What was I going to say?
Or you get into a mucking fuddle.
You do. Oh my gosh, what was I going to say? Right, yes. I get very agitated if I am subject to noise that I don't have control over. So the noise cancellation aspect means that I won't get agitated because I can hear other people, and I can focus purely on the stimulus that I've chosen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Instead of, will you shut the... Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot more approachable of a way to go about things. It makes me less of a villain.
Yeah. Richard, you're spiky.
Yeah.
Am I though?
I've got a specific set of requirements that I need to be met. That's all.
So look, everything we do is to fulfill our own human needs. My human need is to be a member of this tribe, and I'm going to get kicked out of this tribe if I murder you. So to help me not murder you, please can you speed up your dubstep so it actually sounds like music again? Or so talk to me about past experiences at work. Have you had some great bosses that have helped you on your way, or have you had a mixture of great bosses and bad bosses?
My current boss is the best boss I've ever had. He just gets it. He's surrounded by ADHD women, actually, because I'm not the only one in the workplace. And he is so accommodating in terms of when I work. So if I don't want to work at 11 a.m. and I don't have a call or anything I have to attend, I can go and do whatever. As long as the work gets done, I decide when it gets done. Past workplaces have not been that accommodating. They've expected my best hours of focus to be from 9 to 5, which just isn't the case for me. I'm better on an evening. So I was taking work home from that 9 to 5 and finishing it at home because I couldn't manage to do it in the hours of 9 to 5, which just isn't good for burnout. They found out I was doing it and they were cross at me. So, I didn't thrive there. But I'm in a place now where I manage my own workload and it works really well.
So you're on your journey for support and looking for an ADHD coach.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to talk about the thought process you've gone through in how or who you'd look for support from?
Happily. I think a really important thing for me with an ADHD coach was to get someone who had ADHD, because I didn't want to have anybody who didn't directly understand everything about the way an ADHD brain works. I also did want them to be a woman. I don't know whether that's a little bit of a controversial thing to say, but I
discrimination. You're such a bigot, Amy.
It presents differently in men and women. So I wanted somebody who understood what it meant to be a woman with ADHD. And the reason I decided that I wanted it at all was from a professional standpoint, figuring out how to organise myself and make the most of having the brain I've got. And I wanted someone who was further down the line than me, who knew they had ADHD longer than me and could give me some pointers.
And have you now found someone, or are you on a short list?
So I've found somebody and I'm waiting for my access to work funding to come through to pay for that, or I'm waiting for potentially my business to pay for it so they can get refunded, just because it would really benefit me professionally.
All right, that's awesome. And when that comes through, is that likely to be a weekly thing or a monthly thing? How often are you hoping to get guidance and support?
It's weekly, and they're always available through message, and there's some like group sessions and resources available as well.
Oh, that's really cool. So we've talked about school and not having many friends.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about A levels. What was the A level that you tried then bounced off of before you then went travel and tourism?
I tried 4.
Okay.
I tried history, photography, English literature, and something else. History, English lit, photography. What was the other one? We'll never know.
Maybe it was only 3.
Blast an impression.
But again, writing's back in there.
Yeah.
So you were onto something. And then what spawned you to go, I could travel the world, and going into travel and tourism at like 18?
Wanting to travel.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I want to travel, which I think that's a common ADHD theme. We want to see practically every country imaginable, the majority. I was like, I may as well get a job that helps me fund it, considering living is expensive and actually paying to travel isn't feasible for everybody. So that's why I went down the travel and tourism route.
Cool. So is this your second or third marketing-y job from your apprenticeship?
So it's my second from the apprenticeship. My apprenticeship was the first, and then I had another, and then I've got this one.
And how many of your friends went to college and got a degree and have got 60 grand's worth of debt when you don't have any?
A good few. But as we say, don't really have that many friends, so
you know, third world problems.
That's the thing. I feel like I've got lots of distant ones, but it's maintaining close friendships that is a little bit more tough, because I forget to check in, and not lots of people can handle that. So the long-standing friends in my life also have ADHD. They get it.
Well, I saw a meme on Facebook a few weeks ago, and it was like, yeah, that moment when you're feeling lonely because nobody's checked in on you, and you realise a phone works two ways.
Yeah. I'm the worst for it. But I did read something really interesting about neurotypical friendships versus neurodiverse. And they compare neurotypical friendships to a rose and neurodiverse friendships to a cactus. You'll probably see where I'm going. A neurotypical friendship is like a rose because it needs more pruning, more care, more regular watering, more check-ins. A neurodiverse friendship is like a cactus because it thrives under any conditions.
And
care.
17 years later, you'll go back and it'll just be there, but bigger. I saw a picture last night. Favorite cactus. Let's see if I can find it again. So basically, it was a picture of a cactus that, taken at the right angle, had like just the right number of like arms. That it was quite funny.
Ridiculous.
But no, I think you're right that neurodiverse folk tend to attract neurodiverse folk.
Because we're the only ones who'll put up with each other, if I'm completely frank.
Well, yes. And sometimes we're also more likely to have a reaction about somebody else's behavior.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A big ADHD thing, actually, what we do in order to show we're kind of interested in the conversation is interrupt, like I've just done. And we like to give our own examples of like how we've experienced things that the other person's talking about. Some people see that as selfish, but another ADHD person sees the fact that I'm interested, I'm offering it as a way to show that I'm empathetic and I understand.
Yeah. That recently I've been having conversations with my dad, my mum, and my dad's brother.
Mm-hmm.
I'll refer to him as my dad's brother because they're fostered and it gets complicated.
Right.
And they're working class, and their idea of a conversation is bragging.
Right.
Even if bragging about bad stuff.
Right.
Well, I've got this wrong with me. Well, I've got 12 tablets. I've got 14 tablets. My leg hurts. I'm like, just stop comparing yourself to each other.
Yeah. It's not the Olympics. Come on.
Just stop one-upping each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, I went forward with booking my ADHD assessment a year ago, pretty much. I think I had it done at the end of October and got the results November last year. And in the summer was when I started really thinking about it and considering getting it done. Went to my parents and I was like, I'm going to do an assessment. You ain't got that. Well, I drove my mum home yesterday and she was like, yeah, so my therapist thinks I might have ADHD. And I'm like, yeah, mum.
Hey.
I kind of...
It came from somewhere.
A year ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, my nephew is, you know, not well with everything he's got going on. And I was like, you know that this stuff's like hereditary. You know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's got to have come from somewhere. So yeah, that whole conversation of, you know, bringing in your own example to show that you care is so easily misconstrued of, yeah, but it's you're just making this about you now. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, maybe I am making it about me because I'm a narcissist. I use that in one of my speaking sessions. I ran a session in September, and I was like, well, maybe I just like the sound of my own voice. I was like, yeah, hang on, I need to wind that back a bit. But yeah, it's really strenuous trying to keep up civil relations with acquaintances who don't get you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm involved with a whole bunch of charities. Yeah, I was on a committee of a very small non-profit, and fell out with somebody about COVID restrictions because the line was, well, we should do whatever we can to make sure people are safe. And I was like, define safe so they won't get it. Okay, well, the only way that we can, you know, the line on that is to wear a positive pressure hazmat suit because COVID's a thing. And yeah, if government departments are doing that to stop the spread, then if you want to go be as safe as we can be, then we should wear hazmat suits. You're making a joke about it. I'm not making a joke about it. It's logical. But if you think wearing a mask while I walk past you and then taking it off to eat a snack 6 feet away from you is the safest we can be, sadly, I think you're wrong. Maybe we shouldn't be eating snacks 6 feet away from each other without our masks on. And this was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, this wasn't in the middle of the pandemic. It was, you know, we need to learn to live with COVID.
Yeah.
Living with COVID isn't hiding behind a mask for the rest of your life. You can choose to, because that might make you feel safe and sheltered. But you can't demand everybody lives by your rules because you don't feel safe. So he then left the committee and blamed me for leaving, saying that I used his neurodiversity against him. Right. And I was like, you don't know that I'm neurodiverse. And just because I disagreed with you didn't mean that I was being horrible to you. You know, you got upset by what I said. You asked me to apologize and I apologized. And then you still said, well, you haven't apologized. Well, what more do you want me to do? You know, if I apologize again, then you'll say that I'm being disingenuous because I didn't mean the first apology. Let's not go around in circles. Yeah, let's draw a line under it and move on. But
and I think standing for what we do and being who we are, even just going back to the point where we make things about ourselves to show that we're empathetic, choosing to actively not do that because we know it's not socially acceptable, is something that requires a lot of effort. And there's been a lot of conversation about that, about masking and deciding to fit societal norms. But people don't realise how much effort that takes us in our day-to-day lives. Double thinking, double checking, is this acceptable? Am I doing what's right? Am I doing what's expected of me? Will people get offended if I'm the real me? And goodness me, isn't that a weight to bear? You're going through life. It takes you twice the amount of effort to
exist.
Exactly, than anybody else. And you wonder why you're so tired all the time.
Well, and then you've got the other end of the scale where you try and be your authentic self and then living with the guilt and shame that you've pissed people off.
Yeah.
Okay, but then if I don't care that I piss people off, then I'm sociopath. Yeah. Okay, great. So we're on this grey scale of being considerate and compassionate and benevolent whilst giving a shit.
Yeah. I think one of the best ways to do that is things like we're doing, is giving education, it's giving insight in a way where we're being honest and open, which is why I post about ADHD on my LinkedIn all the time, because it gives people insight to what I mean, to who I am, to why I am the way I am. And I think we're getting a lot better as a society at doing that. For all our downfalls, there is a much better and open space for mental health and general discourse.
Well, I also think that the stigma of the term ADHD has changed in the last 5 years. With the massive uptick in the last 5 or 7 years of women being diagnosed with ADHD, it's no longer that mouthy twat boy or that kid acting out. It's that quiet daydreamer off reading a book, or the girl who never puts her hand up because, well, it's not that she doesn't know the answer, but she probably didn't even hear the question.
Or she'll forget her answer halfway through.
I go, oh, I know the answer. There was something I was going to say. It was really good.
I feel so attacked.
but then you kind of lock into stuff. So I studied separate sciences and geography at GCSE. Okay, well, for 5 years at secondary school, all I talked about was pyroclastic flows because it's just there. So I remember Colin Walker, who was the former head of year of one of the years, not our year, was our geography teacher. And whenever we got to talk about volcanoes, he was like, Richard, and what's this answer? And I was like, I know the answer. And then in biology, we started and finished every biology lesson in our GCSE lessons reciting the balanced symbol equation for photosynthesis.
Yikes.
Brilliant. So I can tell you the balanced symbol equation for photosynthesis because it's in here and it will never leave.
And it's never going to be useful.
Well, it was because my eldest, when he was in year 8, I think 7 or 8, was like, Dad, we're doing photosynthesis, and I was like,
you were like,
cool. B6H12O6 plus 6O2. And they were like, what? Anyway, and he's now doing chemistry A level and maths and further maths. So I did all right and then flunked my A levels. And that wasn't anything to do with meeting my now wife in 6th form.
Oh no, and having kids so early, not at all.
Well, yeah. Well, we fell pregnant with Ethan in the September that we were meant to be going to uni, but neither of us had applied to go to uni, so we weren't really going to go to uni.
No,
were we?
Turned out all right.
But I was doing law. Well, that's where I met Kate. But I was doing maths, chemistry, physics. Ethan's doing maths, more maths, and chemistry, and computer science.
So it's where you left off?
Well, it's really funny. I was at a meeting yesterday. Wednesday night. And his bus got cancelled. So he walked to where I was having a meeting, come into the meeting, got my keys and left. And the other trustees, it's a charity in Cambridge that house elderly folk of low means. So it's an almshouse, but essentially giving subsidised housing to older people. The rest of the trustees are like, he's definitely your son. It's like, if he had a beard, he would be you. And I was like, yeah, I know.
Proudly.
And it's like, so has he walked all the way here from his college? And I was like, he goes to like the 6th form college that's 200 meters on the same road. It's like across a railway bridge to where I was. But yeah, he'd walked all the way into town to then find out his bus home was cancelled, so then walked back to us. But proud dad moment. He's in one of the top 5 6th forms in the country doing awesome stuff. And has a passion for it. So, since I got my diagnosis, his cousin has got ADHD and autism. So I'm the last year or so, it's been like, hey, what's going on with the kids? Are the kids getting all the support they need? And loads of the conversations were, they're doing all right. And if they need more help, they're getting more help. So that might be extra tuition or more time to read or more support and guided reading for the younger kids. So without needing to get them diagnosed or needing them to have the label or the stigma attached to the labels, the schools have actually been quite good to say, your kid isn't where they are meant to be on this thing. Here's what we've done to support them.
See, I
which is
wonder,
quite good.
and this is something I think about, is would I have wanted to have been diagnosed younger?
Mm.
And that's a tough one, because I think if I was further supported in school, I could have done better. But equally, I may have used it as an excuse in my childhood brain to be like, oh, well, I've got this. And I might not have pushed myself as hard. Um, and I never got extra time or anything on exams. And I still did really well. Um, but I don't want to convince myself that everything would have definitely been better if I knew sooner.
Yeah, and that's kind of the conversation I had with Matt Gutwell in his session. Is, you know, what got us to where we are is what we had.
Mhm.
And although there's been speed bumps and chasms to cross
Oh, yeah.
in that journey,
Mhm.
we wouldn't be who we are if we didn't go through what we went through.
Mhm.
So, you know, is there any historical regrets and all that conversation? But, you know, one of my sons has always been challenging. You know, I always joke that he got to his terrible twos and he's now 15. Yeah, but he's a top bloke. You know, he's been working for 6 months at the weekends now. Next week he's, you know, part funded a trip out, you know, to another country
That's
with
amazing.
his grandparents, because he's like, well, I've worked, I've bought myself an Apple Watch, and I've got some money to go on holiday with.
That's so cool.
Fantastic. And then his big brother's like, yeah, but why didn't you have to do anything for me? And I was like, because he did it for himself.
Yeah.
So how about you pull your finger out and you do something? But yeah, he's doing 4 A levels and extended curricular activities. And
Oh, yeah. So he's not just
you,
sat back on his
you don't need to have a job right now. But you know, he was really into like computer science and game design. So yeah, during this GCSE A level big summer holiday, I was like, well, do you want to do some work experience? You know, we can contact loads of places because we live on the outskirts of Cambridge. You know, there's loads of tech companies here that you could just go to for 20 hours a week during the summer holidays and just get the experience of being in that industry.
Yeah.
No. All my mates playing games for 10 weeks. That's all I'm going to do for 10 weeks. Fantastic. He's been at this new college 6 weeks. And he's like, so I've got arms details. I'm going to reach out. And I'm like, you're doing 4 A levels, extracurricular activity, and you want to do like an internship. Are you mad? But you know, it's really funny to see, you know, the ability of kids to fend for themselves or develop, depending on the support available to them from their family.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've been really hands-on with our kids. Well, I think that we've been quite hands-on. We haven't been a helicopter parent, but we also haven't been feckless. And they've done all right.
Yeah.
But you know, there's other people that I know that, you know, being diagnosed at the age of 3 and then just tossed aside. It's like, you know, there was a statistic somewhere that something like 17% of people with autism have jobs.
Yeah. That's mad.
Well, because somebody's turned around and said, you're defective, get in your box.
Yeah.
And so many of them have gone, all right then.
Yeah.
Where if you don't label them, you don't say that they're defective.
And especially not younger, when you can't process that and you can't come to terms with it in an adult way.
Yeah. And when they become adolescent or young adults, giving them the ability to not have an easy life.
Yeah.
Well, at least try and get a job. You know,
the best thing you can do is start to work. I got my first job at 16 and it was customer service. It was Costa, so it was really fast paced. And it did the world of wonders for me. I don't think I'd be here now without that job, because it gave me so much confidence talking to people, even just getting myself into work. It was what made me so attractive for the next position. And I wouldn't change it for a thing. Got me a bit of money, learned responsibility young before I was 18.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing I could have done.
And then you left to go into the digital marketing course, or did you get sacked?
No, I didn't get sacked.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I actually held down a job. For
Hang on, somebody with ADHD didn't get sacked. I don't know if she's got ADHD.
I've literally never been sacked. Imagine that.
Yeah, yeah. I've had plenty of opportunities removed from me. Yeah, yeah. Well, we've decided not to continue your contract. Okay, but it's a contracted role, so that's not technically getting fired because you hired me for 6 months and it's been 6 months. That's not getting fired, is it? No.
That's what I'm taking away from this.
Yeah, no. The one that hurt the most was I was working for a local company, and they were like, right, your job is to book in these like regular routine annual services.
Oh,
That is your job. So you have a list of a few hundred customers.
that sounds like my nightmare.
And then you contact them and say, hey, you're due your annual service.
Oh, no.
When can we book it in? Book it in.
Oh.
Well, the problem was in the first 10 weeks, I'd booked 6 months worth of these services. So then people were like, well, I've got no work to do today because Richard hasn't given me any work. And I was like, well, I can't give you any work because I'm now booking services for 9-month-old contracts, not 12-month-old contracts. So people aren't going to pay us every 9 months to do an annual service. So apparently I lied to a customer and got fired.
Oh.
I think you'll find that I was too good at the job.
Yeah.
And you didn't have enough customers for me to actually service.
You didn't slack enough.
So, maybe if I was, taking my time and only booking in 4 appointments a day, not the 8 or 10 that could actually be achieved. And, working your guys hard because there's 8 hours in a day. It's going to take you half an hour to get between this address and this address because I've Googled it. You should be doing more than 4 hours work and 4 hours driving a day. And the tone was set really early on. One of the senior service guys took me out on the first day and we sat having lunch for 2 hours. And I was like, is this normal? So, yeah, I tend to go home between 12 and 2 in the afternoon.
I wouldn't be complaining. I would not be complaining.
Well, yeah. Anyway, so that hurt a bit because I kind of fit in. It was with technical guys, customer services stuff. I was in my element, project management, customer services.
And you gave it your all. You did.
Yeah. I knew what I was talking about, and I did a bloody good job.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. See you later. And then it turns out that they've had 5 people in that role in 3 years.
Oh boy.
Well, maybe it's not who you're hiring; it's the job.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? There's a common denominator there.
Yeah, and it's not me.
Yeah.
But it's also really funny that in that contracting world, there was 2 or 3 of us that were like always succeeding or preceding each other. I was like, oh, so Adrian was here like 3 months ago. Really? Oh yeah, he took over from me at the council. So yeah, then you start your own little sub niche of
facing each other.
Professional services project managers on contract within 20 miles of Cambridge, and you realise there's only 8 of you, and you occasionally cross paths.
To each other.
So I was at Rakuten, which is the big company that bought out Play.com, and I was there on a contract role after being made redundant. And about 2 months into the role, I went to the finance team. In the finance team was Lisa, my old direct report from the company that we got made redundant from.
Oh boy.
Because she was at Play.com before she came to that other organization and then went back to Play.com afterwards. So I got to work with her in 2 different organizations, which was kind of cool. But yeah, it's all a little bit mad. So coming close to the end of time, is there anything that you feel passionate that you want to talk about that we haven't had the opportunity to talk about?
I'm unsure. Let me think. I'm trying to think about my personal life and what's the toughest thing at the moment. I think it's probably just an awareness of trauma, because as you've grown up, there's so many micro rejections that society gives you, especially when you feel misunderstood. So what I'm doing at the moment is unpacking all of that, and how it's affected me in everything, in my personal life, in my professional life. And I think it's really important that everybody who figures out they've got ADHD gets therapy, because there's no doubt that it'll have given you a few chinks in your armour. Because if you're misunderstood, it does have a massive emotional impact, and you carry things you don't realise you are.
No, absolutely. Another bang of the drum for Donna Lancaster's book, The Bridge. She and her friend Gabby put together a psychotherapy retreat called The Bridge, to deal with grief, childhood wounding, trauma, loss. So in the run up to that, we did a loss chart. So basically on a piece of paper, writing born and today, and then chunking that into segments and putting down, when your cat died, or when your nan died, or when you had your car accident, or your boyfriend broke your heart, on that list, and then using that list to then get a top 10, and then using that top 10 to then get a top 3, and then starting to look at doing some work on those most important ones, because what I found was that a lot of the early traumas, a lot of the later traumas were because of earlier traumas.
Sounds right. Yeah.
So actually, by spending time dealing with the earlier stuff, there's less to process on the later stuff, because you've already got the foundation as to why they happened. So that was quite interesting. And basically, Donna's written a book about the retreat. She no longer runs the retreat because she's decided to take some retirement, which is perfectly adequate and useful for her to manage her own well-being. But she, Love parentheses D on Amazon. It's an Amazon Prime feature-length movie about the retreat. So you can watch it for free on an Amazon Prime subscription. And the book's fab. But yeah, it's amazing how rejection sensitivity disorder, dysphoria, depending on which and who you speak to. Matt referred to PCD or something, just pathological sensitivity to something. No, PDA, pathological avoidance demand. So I'm going to undertake some research to look at PDA and RSD, and see where the overlaps are, because they sound like the same thing.
I think what people don't understand, if they don't have it, is almost your awareness that you're being overdramatic, and the fact that it physically hurts. I can't explain that enough. But my boss is going for an autism assessment, and he just doesn't understand the heights and the downs of my emotions. So to try and explain to somebody like him, when I feel rejected in my job in some way, maybe it's a piece of feedback.
Because somebody copy edited what you wrote. How dare they?
It literally hurts me physically. And that is so hard for some people to wrap their head around. It's almost like physically feeling your heart break. I can't describe it any better way than that. It's like a pain in your chest. But also knowing, because of society and the expectations and limits that are given to you, that you're being overdramatic, and you shouldn't get upset.
You shouldn't feel that way.
Exactly. Especially it's something that is sometimes just perceived rejection. It's not outright. It could just be someone, I don't know, you say hello to somebody and they blank you, and actually they were distracted. They didn't realize you were there, but you're like, oh, what have I done? Pang of pain. And you know that you're being overdramatic, but it doesn't stop you from feeling those things. So even just processing that it takes a lot. And part of discovering you've got ADHD is grieving all of that misunderstanding, all of thinking you were oversensitive when you're actually dealing with something you didn't realize you had.
Or the other end of the scale where your defense mechanism is to not feel.
Yeah. Or apathy. That happens after you've felt too much.
So, I had a very interesting conversation with a relative recently. And, they were like, well, I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
I was like, nobody does.
Yeah.
Unless you like go and live in the desert for 3 weeks on your own, nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
So it's okay for you to not know who you are.
Yeah.
Okay. And what does it feel like for you not to know who you are? Like an empty vessel.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'd like to be a full vessel. Yeah. Okay, but what can we do to fill you? I don't know. Okay, well, that sounds like we've got some work to do then, doesn't it? Because so much historical trauma and family trauma and all of this conversation of, well, why did this bad thing happen to my relative, not me? I was like, well, it goes back to that whole conversation of bragging and one-upmanship and trying to make yourself you. All of that in this trauma soup isn't a good thing. I'm feeling bad because something bad's happened to somebody I love. Okay, that's normal.
Yeah, but the extreme empathy that we have as people with ADHD does make it exhausting, and it will turn to apathy if things are left unchecked and you feel too much and you can't unpack it and process it properly. It's natural. If you're too emotional for too long, eventually your body goes, no, I've had enough, and you do go through a period of apathy, even if you're the most emotional person in the world, self-declared.
I find it quite useful to talk about introversion and extroversion with the balance of energy in that same conversation, because those people who get their energy from others might be considered extrovert. But the emotional toll, or the energy, the toll on your energy from dealing with emotional situations
and masking, goodness me.
The amount of times that I've literally clenched my fist instead of smashing my teeth together.
Oh yeah.
Because I was like, I want this to stop.
Yeah.
But I'm not in the right place to tell anyone to stop.
Yeah.
So I just need to shut up. So a relative the other day picked up their phone because they had it in their hand, and they just put it over their mouth. I was like, I can't. You asked me not to talk. I'm physically blocking my mouth from talking. So okay, that's cool. You'll just take a breath. But yeah, it's exhausting.
I think it is, and you bring up such a good point that I've never thought of before, because I do self-declare extrovert. I'm definitely an extrovert. I get my energy from people, but only people where it doesn't require a ton of energy for me to pretend to be something I'm not, which is not ADHD. If I have to mask my traits, or I have to mask who I am in order for you to think I like you, because occasionally I'm ignorant, occasionally I'm distracted, that's when it gets exhausting and it isn't actually meeting my need for social interaction. I am an extrovert, but I need that energy from people who don't drain it, because I need to mask. And I've never thought about it that way before. I've always thought, why are my best friendships with other ADHD folk? And that'll be exactly why.
Because they've got the energy to give.
I need to pretend to be something else. I don't need to think, is this socially acceptable? We just understand each other.
Yeah. And I think communication and courage and benevolence in that communication is really powerful, because then the next conversation I had with that same group of people, I set the boundary.
Yeah.
And I said, look, we need to have this conversation. It's really important that we have this conversation. And it's really important that we hear what this other person needs to tell us, because they know what they're talking about and we don't.
Yeah.
So instead of jumping in with, yeah, but, and jumping in with, this is what I've got going on, that's not the most important thing right now. The most important thing right now is for us to listen to what we're being told.
Yeah.
So shut up. And then I got the response of, okay, well, I'm physically going to show you that I'm complying. Okay, well, physically show me that you're complying. That's fine, as long as you don't do the behavior that we've just agreed that you're not going to do. That's fine. You can stand in the corner, you can leave the room, you can do what you want, just don't do what we've agreed shouldn't happen, because what we need to do is focus on what we're being told, because what we're being told is really important. But yeah, it's amazing how quickly you're just sapped of, yeah, is it about, well, who was it? I watched something and it was talking about empathy and love, and when you're giving love, you're literally giving something, so you can't love everything the same, because you wouldn't have any love left. So you need to decide how much effort you're putting into those relationships or those activities, because you can't love your child as much as you love your cat, because or your wife, or your dream house, or your favorite holiday location, or that's one spot on your favorite chair where you just seem to fit. And if you're an inch off of it, you know that you're not in the right place. You can't love all of that to the same level, because you've only got
so many slots. I talk about that with my mum. I'm like, listen, I've only got so many slots when it comes to people who I can genuinely love and be there for all the time. And once they're filled, you're just going to have to take what's left, because we've only got so many slots. I've only got so many slots in my brain.
No, wasn't there a song or a meme or a Instagram reel about, this guy loves his bed and his mum, so he can't love a girl because he'd have to either stop loving his bed or his mum?
I haven't seen it, but it sounds interesting.
I'm sure it was a song. I've got Tones and I in my head now. I was like, that's not the right song. But no, because now I've got,
that's going to agitate you,
a cup of coffee for my head in my head, and that's not good for me, because that's a song about beds. But anyway, but I get you. It's going back to those executive function slots. It's like, look, I have Ellie Middleton's post this last week. Your to-do list is 3 things. If it's not on your top 3, then it shouldn't really be on your to-do list, because you can't really focus on all of that at the same time.
It's Drake, by the way.
Was it Drake?
I love my bed and my mama. I'm sorry.
See, I know far too much about far too much.
You don't, because I actually gave you the answer. So
yeah, but I knew it was a song.
Yeah, whatevs.
And I knew the context of the song. I just didn't know who sang it.
Well, there you go.
And I did relate it to another song about a bed.
You did. Which is always welcome in my conversation.
So, yeah. Did you Google, or did that pop
No,
through?
it came into my head, and I was thinking about it while you were talking, which is very much an ADHD thing.
Very much an ADHD thing. Brilliant. Well, we're losing the light, so soon I'll have to go into full disco mode and
I like it.
Find the right shade that makes me not look pasty or red faced. I'm really upset that this speaking thing that I did back in September, the event photographer took 3 photos of me presenting, and the end button color on this call was the color of my face. I was like, I wasn't that red, was I? It wasn't that hot. I wasn't sweaty. Just was I really that red?
See,
Maybe you
my
could just
surname,
like
my surname, I'm sure it was a Scottish clan that
yeah.
stole sheep from the border. So all my pastiness, which is, I'm not going to say covered with makeup because I'm still pale, but that's why it's my Scottish heritage.
Look, I'm not that red.
Yeah,
Now maybe it was like the red balance, but I'm not. That was my new suit.
it was rigged. You were rigged. It was all rigged.
I quite like that suit. Yeah, I paid. I think it was 2/3 off in a sale.
Mm.
So yeah, the retail price was stupid amounts of money, and I didn't pay stupid amounts of money for it. But it's a lovely suit.
It is a nice suit.
So hopefully we will see each other at or before NIB's national conference next year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been lovely having you on.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
It's been a pleasure.